All right, good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to another edition of PT on Ice. My name is Jason London. I am lead faculty with the Endurance Athlete Division, and so I teach rehabilitation of the injured runner, rehabilitation of the injured runner online, and then the professional bike fit certification course. So all of those courses are starting up here soon. The next cohort for the online rehabilitation of the injured runner is starting May 4th, so there are still some spots available. Sign up if you like. And then the first offering of the bike fit course is full in May in Minneapolis, but I'm excited to say that we are offering another offering of the course in October in Golden, Colorado. So check out that on the PT on Ice website. Well, what I want to talk about today is runners, one of my favorite topics, and really, some ways to assess and then treat injured runners. So what we see a lot with running-related injuries when we're looking at their running mechanics is often it's tied to overstriding. So overstriding means that they're striking or contacting with their initial contact out too far in front of their center of mass, which is increasing impact to the lower extremity, particularly the knee and the hip. And that repetitive increased impact and loading results in the running-related injury, or is one of the main contributors to that running-related injury. So a good way to assess this, even if you don't have the ability to do video analysis, is to simply calculate a runner's cadence. So a runner's cadence is how many steps per minute they're taking. So at a certain speed, if someone is taking less steps per minute, so a slower cadence, for example, if someone's running at a cadence of 160 steps per minute versus someone who's running at the same speed at 180 steps per minute with relatively the same body height and everything, that runner who is running at 160 beats per minute or steps per minute is going to be taking longer strides. Now, this isn't necessarily a problem if that longer stride is more in their kick out the back, but more often than not, we're seeing that longer stride being reaching in front. And Brian Heiderscheit has done a lot of research in this area in his group at University of Wisconsin. And what he found is that those runners with a slower cadence are overstriding. They have less knee flexion at initial contact, so less ability to kind of absorb impact through the knee. They also have greater vertical center of mass displacement, meaning they're bouncing or they're basically landing from a higher height than they need to while they're running. And associated with that, there's greater vertical ground reaction force and a greater loading rate. So all of that together can contribute to a running-related injury. So what we can do then is treatment for those runners with a slower cadence is do cadence retraining. So what cadence retraining is we're going to increase their cadence by having them take more steps per minute at that given speed. So if your runner is running at 6 miles per hour on the treadmill, you calculate their cadence to be 160 steps per minute, and you're looking at basically what type of injury they have, mainly kind of a knee-related injury, probably anterior knee pain, most common running-related injury. And you're assessing that you want to change their cadence and increase their cadence. So you're going to have that runner practice running at a higher cadence at 10% over their self-selected cadence. So their self-selected cadence is 160, and we're going to go 10% above that. So we're going to go to 176, and then just using a metronome, either using a metronome app on a phone or a tablet, or having a good old metronome from piano lessons in the clinic, or that they can use outside of the clinic, and then they will run to the beat of that metronome. The key is they have to, at least initially, do that on a treadmill, ideally, so that they can keep speed constant. Because most people, if they're increasing their cadence by using that metronome technique, and they're running just over ground, and they don't have any way to gauge speed, they're likely just going to increase their speed rather than change their running mechanics. So the key is to really, ideally having them run on a treadmill so speed can be a constant. Alternative would be that they could have someone pace them, or they could be, using a smartwatch and tracking their speed with that as well. But it definitely is easiest to do if they have access to a treadmill, and obviously, hopefully, you have access to a treadmill in the clinic, and maybe they could come in for a few more visits than you were planning, just so they could get that cadence retraining, and you could give them some feedback. And the way to do that is not to have them run with the metronome for the entire time. So we want them to acquire the skill. So we'll do some block training initially, where they'll have the metronome on for a period of time while they're running, and then turn it off, and then turn it back on. So I like to have them do little 5-minute chunks where they're 2 minutes on with the metronome, timing their footsteps to the beat of the metronome, and then 3 minutes off. And then go another round of 5 where it's 2 minutes on, 3 minutes off. And doing that, at least 3 times on the treadmill to really kind of get acclimated to that. And then they can probably take it outside, and their running mechanics should change with that. And then once they kind of start checking in with their cadence after that 3-minute kind of pause from using the metronome, and if they're consistently right on that cadence, then having them be more random with that training. So 2 minutes, here, and then maybe 10 minutes off, and then another 2 minutes, so that they really incorporate that skill and keep it for the long term. So what are we looking for with their changes in running mechanics? Well, unless you have an instrumented treadmill or force plates, you're really not going to see changes in the clinic, and the runner certainly isn't going to see it outside of the clinic in what their ground reaction force, peak ground reaction force is, or their loading rate is. So we need to look at the kinematics, so things that we can see in their running form or technique. So we want to see their stride be closer to their center of mass. Now, they don't want to land right on their center of mass, because they're not going to really be able to store much energy with that. But we want to see that stride come closer to their center of mass. So basically, if their heel is hitting right about in line with where their ASIS is on the front of their hip, is a good measure for that. Another thing we want to see is we want to see them having some degree of knee flexion at initial contact. So ideally 20 to 30 degrees of knee flexion at initial contact. And then lastly, we want to see their gait smooth out, so they're not as bouncy. So we want to see that that center mass vertical displacement decrease, so that they're not bouncy and not landing from that higher height. And those 3 things together, whether all of them change or just one of them change, should be enough, because of the repetitive nature of running and just the great cumulative load that occurs with running, to decrease their symptoms and allow them to run with less pain, and potentially run longer with less pain or no pain. And then we still, of course, want to work on the other things that we find with them in the clinic, looking at strength, mobility, and certainly talking to them about their training. One strategy that a lot of runners will use when they're changing their cadence is they will change their strike pattern. So they typically are probably going to be more of a severe heel strike if they're overstriding, and they'll switch to more of a rear foot strike or a midfoot strike. And just know that we are decreasing load at one area of the body where the injury is, the knee or the hip typically, and potentially increasing load if they're changing their strike mechanics at another area. So we do want to be cognizant of that when we're talking to them about their training load with running. So again, cadence is a really useful tool for assessing running mechanics for injured runners, as well as then addressing and doing gait retraining. So hope this helps you out in the clinic. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. If you want to learn more about treating injured runners and running mechanics, check us out with either Rehabilitation Injured Runner online. Next cohort is starting May 4th, or check us out at one of the live courses. I think the next one is in June in Denver, and we'd love to have you. Otherwise, type some things in the comments, and I'll get to those questions. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.